Welcome to Speak with Purpose, a celebration of thought and influence, where bold ideas ignite action. Join Christine Gagnon and the TEDxCatawba community in shaping the future.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christine Gagnon, founder and organizer of TEDxCatawba. We're here today to introduce one of our esteemed speakers for our 2025 event to be held here in Hickory, North Carolina on June 14th at the Drendel Auditorium. I'm joined today by Tessa West. She is a professor of psychology at New York University and is leading expert on workplace communications. Welcome, Tessa.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for our chat.
We are so happy to have you here. So before we get into it, I'd love to make a little bit of a deeper introduction and just read a little bit from your bio, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome. So your research explores feedback dynamics, cultural influences, and strategies for better professional interactions. With over 80 publications, prestigious awards, and major research funding, you're a sought-after media voice, I agree, and the author of Jerks at Work and Job Therapy, which I have Job Therapy behind me. Your TED Talk, The Problem with Being Too Nice at Work, was a top 10 most watched of 2024. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I love that collaboration with you. So you and I know each other pretty well. We're friends. I would love to ask you some questions. I've actually never had the opportunity to ask you to share more with our audience about you. So tell me where it all started. Like, did you know when you were 10 years old that you'd be writing a book, Jerks at Work, and going through this sort of area of research? It's so interesting. I love it.
I knew when I was 10 years old that I liked to watch people have really awkward social interactions, and I was pretty fascinated by it. And I didn't want to run away from it like a lot of other people do. I kind of have a stomach for, those kind of discomfort moments that we all feel. And I think, another thing I learned about myself at age 10 is I'm probably one of the most direct communicators you're going to come across. And so I just really think it's important for people to learn how to do that. And I think we're afraid of it. We learn how to kind of, have circumscribed communication all the time. And it's a problem for a lot of us. And so those are kind of the two things I learned at age 10. I keep it real, and I like to watch it when other people fall flat on their face. And so those two pieces of information, I think, motivated me to kind of study the rough parts of social interaction, how we get it right and how we get it wrong.
I love that, by the way, and I did not know that at age 10. I was busy saying, oh my God, I want like a barcode thing, and I want an inventory management system. No, the accountant here was like asking my parents for really, really weird things. So your story is much more interesting. Do you have a story maybe that you could share when you realized, I get it more so than others, and that kind of led you down your path?
Oh, I don't get it more so than others. Okay, I have my story of when it kind of clicked that people really need to hear this message that it's okay to feel bad about this, and they really wanted some advice of how to do it different. So I think what I get is that I'm good with saying the things that people feel but are afraid to say or don't quite have the courage to say. I think the reason why the talk that you helped me with and you helped make it funny and engaging and relatable is because we all kind of know what it means to be too nice at work, to give people feedback that isn't useful, but we don't know how to talk about it in a way that is both funny and true and not mean. And so I think that's kind of where my skill lies. I can talk about difficult issues, troubling issues, but with a lightness to it, and in a direct way. And I think most academics don't really do that. They like to use a lot of jargon. And so what I get is how to do that, I think. And I think what's really key is when you're a professor, when you're a scientist, you can't talk like one, you can't think like one, you're not relatable that way. And so I actually try to kind of leave all that stuff behind and try to think and work through this stuff, in all the other walks of life I've held, and bring that kind of science-based practice to advice, but make myself relatable through all of the other things I've done in my life. So that's kind of where I'm coming at from all of this.
I love the practice, what you preach. And I agree with you. I don't think I've overcome this. Like, I feel like every time I have to give difficult feedback, I'm always kind of like apologizing in advance. Like, oh, I don't want to be mean, but I really need to deliver this message. And I think we're kind of, getting back to that. So maybe pivoting a little bit, I'd love to talk about the last talk we did together. So for our audience, Tessa and I worked together. I was her speaker coach for her first TEDx talk, the one that I would say went viral and was highly successful on the top 10 list. What do you think made that talk go so viral?
It was funny.
It was.
So I had ideas, and then you made it funny, and you helped with the hook. I think, the key to these talks and to getting people into them is you have to start off with something that's interesting and funny and grabs people immediately. And they say, yes, I have felt that. I get that. That's been me. I've seen that. I even played with the audience a little bit. And by the way, I violated every TED rule in the book. And good ways. Like, people say don't engage with the audience because if you do that, then TED's not going to like it. No, like I actually think that sometimes you don't want to take those rules super seriously. And you really kind of helped me figure out ways of organizing the content, to make it, you knew intuitively what would be interesting to people and what maybe could kind of be pushed off to the side. So I think your humor angle, though, was absolutely critical. That was kind of the glue that held that talk together.
Oh, thank you. I love humor. I love humor. And we did. I think we put the audience on edge a little bit. I think we asked a question, right? And we're like, oh, remember that. We're coming back to you. So I love that. I love that all around. So when you did your first talk, I think your book, Jerks at Work, was what we were focused on. And it had come out, was it the year before? Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, I've lost track of actual years, but yes, I think it was the year before that. Yeah.
I feel that way. I'm like, wait, what day is it? I don't even know what day. I think it's Tuesday. Oh my goodness, right? Exactly. So you went, it feels like to me, right from that book into writing your next book. Is that true? And what made you pivot? Like you didn't want to break? You didn't want to just take a vacation or something?
Yeah, now I look back, I'm like, why did I do that? That was crazy. I had an idea, and when you're an author, you actually don't get ideas that often. People think that we're like flowing with ideas, and then we just have to kind of organize when we're going to act on them. And I think job therapy was born out of a moment when people were super angsty and we all felt very lost. I think kind of coming out of the pandemic, a lot of us were like lost puppies, like had no idea where to go. And I feel like there's a lot of bad advice out there. And there were all these like weird trends and movements telling people what to do, and not a lot of like science-based advice, a lot of like, personal experience-based advice. And so I spent actually a good 6 months just doing research for that book, asking people about their experiences, interviewing people, running a lot of studies. I actually did like a whole bunch of experiments for that book. And I think that opened up my eyes to like what was actually going on before I decided to actually kind of sit down and write it. So for me, I didn't decide to write the book until I actually kind of knew what was wrong with what was going on out there. I think I needed that sense. I needed to get a handle on what was going wrong before I could give people advice. I don't love it when academics or anyone give advice without really having a good handle on the problem, or they've kind of seen it from one angle. And then what was really important to me for that book too was that I had an international sample of people who cut across roles and industries and groups, and it wasn't just speaking to Gen Z or Gen X or, people of a certain class. It needed to be a little bit, needed to be a lot, just kind of works for everyone, general kind of psychological principle based, so that it didn't isolate people or make some people feel like this, I don't get this at all, this doesn't apply to me. And so that was something that I spent a lot of time kind of working through with that book. But yes, it felt like I jumped right into the next one.
I remember being in New York and talking about this book while you were doing the talk on the previous book. And I think it was already in your brain as, another brainchild, which is completely amazing. So you talk about the problem, if you will. And I think all of us, at least I know, and everyone that surrounds my immediate circle has had, some issues at work, whether it's interpersonal skills or communication or what have you. What was the big problem for those who have not read your book that you saw? Like, what was the problem statement in that book from that research that led you down your path?
For job therapy?
Yeah, or for either, but yeah, job therapy specifically.
I think the big problem is that people didn't really understand the psychological roots of their unhappiness. They were attributing it to these kind of social external causes. So a lot of times when we're unhappy in any kind of relationship, and in this book, I actually frame your career as a relationship partner. You have a relationship with your career. It goes up, it goes down. You love it, you hate it. You're stuck with it your whole life. You look to external things like work from home policies, compensation packages for why you're unhappy. And I think that that's a bit of a bad direction that most of us have gone. We actually have very emotional relationships with our careers. It's weird to talk about it that way, but we do. And so I thought the problem really was we're focusing on the wrong thing here. We are telling people to figure out whether they want to work from home, how much money they want to make, how much, who they want to work around, all that external business, not like the actual psychological issues that are going on with them that are leading them to be unhappy with those things. And so this book is like marital therapy, but for your relationship with your career. And I really frame all of the kinds of the different chapters that are really kind of based on things that you would go through in any kind of relationship. And I think that was really what I thought was missing, that psychological core of why you're unhappy on all those dimensions, but not focusing on those dimensions in and of themselves.
I love that, especially because a lot of us, I know I do, a big part of my identity is work. Mm-hmm. And so it does become a bit of a relationship question, almost like a relationship with yourself, look inside yourself. So that's a really interesting observation. I was having a conversation with one of my friends the other day, and I was like, I can't believe how much my identity, like what percentage of the total is really work. It's incredible. So I love your book. Thank you for sharing that. I have a very edgy question. It might be controversial, but do you have a view on work from home? Like there's still a debate. Here we are, so much later from COVID, we're past it. There's debates about, should we go back to the office? Should we not? Like, what's your perspective? Is it just in the periphery and that doesn't matter? Or
no,
is there a strong view?
It's terrible. I have a strong views on this. And I'm going to say something strong and then I'll walk it back a little bit.
Okay.
Here's why I think for most of us, obviously not all of us, for most of us working from home, at least in the long term for your career, it's comfortable. I get why people do it. It is not great for your career. And the reasons have to do with social networking and status and how promotions and raises and, learning information really works. So I think, we're taught that if we do our job a certain way and we treat people a certain way, that can all get accomplished from home on Zoom. And if we just click those boxes, we're going to be able to climb up at work. The way these things actually operate is through a lot of informal contact. It's through rich social connections that not only involve you and another person, but you observing other people interacting with each other. And that is essential for learning how to navigate the workplace, for figuring out who has status, for gaining status. So much can be learned by walking into a room and seeing who sits where, who makes eye contact with who, and who stands around at the end and chats and laughs. Right? You don't get any of those social cues in a work from home, and people are thinking those are little things, they don't matter. They add up, they give you a wealth of information that you're not getting. The other thing is a lot of the work that we do, a lot of the kind of information that we learn, the skills that we acquire happen in informal context from people who are not on our teams. And so when you have structured interaction only, meetings via Zoom that are on your calendar, on your diary, you are missing a lot of pieces because you're not interacting with people who are not on your team, who aren't in, your specific kind of function. And that kind of missed information is going to harm you in ways that you don't see, and it's not just about going to someone for advice. It's about overhearing something or seeing something done in a way you never thought of. And, we talk about kind of information transfer and that kind of thing. that stuff is nebulous, it's fuzzy, and we know we need it, but we can't quite kind of nail down exactly like how it works. And so we know from social psychology, from network research, from status research, from learning research, and education, that all of those informal interactions are critical. And then I'll add one more thing. People suffer from doing invisible labor all the time at home. They don't get credit for it because no one sees them do it. And that's a huge problem. And I think if we're all in the office a little bit more, that problem would go down a little bit.
My husband, this is sort of inappropriate, but he always says, well, you've been home all day. I'm like, yes, but I work from home. Like, but I am kind of doing other things. There is kind of a labor component that I think might not be obvious. But you said some things are even more interesting. So I started my career at PwC, and a lot of what I learned was, to your point, not that work is a game, but like how the game is really played. Because if you hop on a Zoom call and you hop off the Zoom call, you don't see all the other stuff, and all the other stuff that's maybe said or unsaid is really critical. So I think while I feel comfortable working from home kind of works for me now, if I started my career that way, I would have lost a lot of those skills, or never had those skills that help me develop into at least a semi-functional human, is the way that I like to think about it. Do you agree with that, or do you think that that is sort of Christine has made herself feel better? And I ask that because part of it is the training, and kind of once you get that EQ, you can take it and maybe be more flexible. I have this kind of fundamental belief that those initial years of training, especially in a career like being an accountant, require the other EQ type things. What's your view on that?
I really think it depends on the actual job you're doing too. I think that stuff is the educational piece. I'm 100% on board with you that early on, you need that stuff. So young people coming into the job market, you don't want to skip that stage. We know this. We already had this experiment, people. We had COVID. We saw what it was like when we're all stuck at home and we didn't socialize. The kids that did that, they are behind in education in every way, and the same applies to the workplace.
Shocking.
So we have that like little experiment tested on us already. So we kind of know what that looks like. I think as you mature in your career and you have those established networks and you kind of already know how to play the game, and you might be doing something that doesn't require that stuff, then I think it's a little bit okay. I mean, a lot of people that have podcasts now that have successful businesses do work from home because they simply don't need all that stuff anymore. They're not the ones benefiting. Other people benefit from them, but they don't need it per se. And so they might be harming someone else. Like there's some young person out there who doesn't get to see you in action, and that's probably harming them, but it's not harming you. And so I think we can kind of think of it that way a little bit, but it really depends on what you're doing and what your job is. But for someone seasoned like you, every day you're sitting in your beautiful home, there's a young woman or man or, whatever out there thinking, man, I could have seen, Christine in action, and that would have helped me learn. Not that I would have guilt you back in the office, but it is that's kind of like how it gets operationalized, like as you're more advanced in your career.
Well, you always make me feel better, every time I see you. So thank you for that.
I'm going to turn this on you and make you feel bad for staying at home because of someone else you've never met.
Somebody's missing out. I get it. Oh gosh, I'm so sad. No, it is. That is, well, that's why I give back and I teach now. So I am in the classroom, because you are right. And I hate to go off on a tangent, but for our listeners, I do work from home primarily. And I also felt like I was missing out on kind of giving back, but also even having human interaction on a regular basis. So I went back to teach in the UNC system, and I'm really happy with that. And I do feel like every day I walk out of the classroom, I've given something back. And these books here aren't just collecting dust; they're real. So you did your TEDx. That was 2023 that you did your talk. Was that right?
Really? Yeah, I think so.
Oh my gosh!
It was TEDx, and then TED picked it up for 2024. Yeah.
So I asked you to join our TEDx stage for this year, which we're so excited. Thank you so much. What inspired you to take the stage again? I say that because, obviously you had a really successful talk. This talk, I'm sure, will be highly successful. But what made you say yes so quickly, other than, well, you love me.
You're a hard person to say no to, honestly. I was on vacation with my family and you called me and I'm like, yes, I want that sounds amazing. I remember I was driving around in Cape May and I just remember thinking, this sounds amazing. Um, yeah, I think that there is a part two to this talk. I think when it comes to interpersonal communication, there's a lot that's still unsaid that I want to talk about. There's still some difficulties out there that people are struggling with. And, I teach a close relationships course at NYU. I'm teaching it right now as well. It is just like a treasure trove of information of what people know, what they don't know, what they think they know, what they're afraid to say they don't know. So I create a super open space. And these college students are really actually pretty comfortable telling me, what pieces they're missing in terms of, communication and uncomfortable conversations. And so I think that people want to hear some advice. I think that, I don't know if I'm going to talk about this, but I think that AI and communication with AI has really changed the game a lot. I think people are using AI to outsource difficult conversations. I know they are. They're using it on the dating websites. They're using it to communicate with potential daters, and they're using it for advice. And so it's like there's lots going on out there now that I think are different pieces that I think are kind of getting in there that make it a fresher, more modern world that we're in. And the old rules are just simply not applying in the same way that the new rules are. So
I love that. I can't even imagine. It's been a while since I've been in the dating scene here, but using AI for those conversations, that is kind of a game changer, good, bad, or otherwise. So I have so many questions. I could go off in a spider web, a plethora of lanes here, but I have to ask you this question. So a close relationships class, like, do you do like awkward role playing, or what does that entail?
Oh, yeah, we do it all. So, this is a close relationships class. So we do everything from, bias in interpersonal perception. So we do these exercises like, why is there a liking gap? Why do we think people like us less than they do? Why is it hard for us to end conversations? So on average, conversations go on longer than anybody wants them to. Why can't we get out of those conversations?
So
why
true.
is
It's like,
why is synchrony really hard to pull off? Like, why is that a really difficult? Why is that a tall order? I'm going to teach them how to argue, and so conflict things. One thing that a lot of people struggle with is they decide they want to be direct communicators, but their partner will do everything to get around it like a little snake. And so what do you do when you want to talk to someone about something difficult and your partner bait and switches you? They bring up a different topic. They bring up, something related that you would need to talk about. How do you handle it when you got a wormy partner who won't do the thing with you? And
I
so
love wormy, wormy partner.
wormy partner, and so we do go through all these kind of difficult situations. And then I also have them, make dating profiles. We talk about catfishing. We talk about all that kind of stuff. And I think like through the scientific lens, there's lots of research out there right now on all these things. Are pheromones a real thing? Not with humans. They aren't actually. Smell matters, but there's no such thing as pheromones. And
Really?
so, yeah, I mean, pheromones are, scents that are universal across the whole species, and the only ones we know exist are for breastfeeding. People used to think they were in the armpits, but lots of Asian people actually don't produce smell in their pits, and so that can't be.
God, I love you.
There's a TED Talk on that. Yeah, so I myth buster quite a bit. Do not buy pheromone-based cologne perfume. It's not a thing.
I've learned two things today about more about armpits, which that's amazing, and that like the general understanding of pheromones, like that, is kind of like the street knowledge is not
street
true.
knowledge, there's real knowledge, there's
Okay.
street knowledge becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy just because you want it to. So we do all this tough stuff.
That is wonderful. I have a question, something you said, and I'm interested. Did you say that we often think people like us less than they do?
This is a
Really?
very well-established finding in the literature. There's a guy named Gus Cooney who studies this. It's called the liking gap, and we just think people like us less than they do. So you have an initial conversation with someone, a getting acquainted conversation. This cuts across all types of studies. They've done studies on subways, all places. We focus a lot on our own little weird things that we do, our mishaps, our faux pas. Oh, I said that one thing, it was really awkward, or I asked them the wrong question. And we have this sort of myopic view of ourselves, the spotlight effect. Our partners aren't thinking about all that stuff. And so I think that leads us to assume they like us less than they do. And it's probably one of the most established findings in the kind of interpersonal communication literature. It's hard for us to accept it, but yeah. That's one of the tried and true ones.
And is that true in the beginning of a relationship? Presumably, like that kind of comes together over time, or no? I'm just so curious.
This is true for just getting acquainted conversations.
Okay.
I think in romantic relationships, it's a whole other beast, and then all these other kinds of things kind of come into play. There are major gender effects in heterosexual relationships. Men think women like them more than they do. Women think men like them less than they do. But yeah, we're terrible person perceivers. And by that, I mean, we tend to not actually know what's going on in people's minds. And instead of asking them, we just fill in the blanks with our own ideas. And we just kind of walk around the world like that. And I think that is something that most of us do because it's non-normative to say, what did you mean by that? What did you think about that? I think the only time you actually see those behaviors is on TV shows like Love on the Spectrum, which is like a beautiful illustration of how to be a direct communicator because they are learning.
I've seen that show. I love that show.
Yeah, they learn how to ask what someone's thinking and feeling, but the questions they ask, we should all be asking.
I feel like really awkward when someone does that to me. I know it's healthy, and I have watched that show, and I completely agree with you, but it still catches me off guard. I'm like, whoa, what?
Yeah, it's not a norm. We walk around, we should just make stuff up in our head what the other person's feeling because it's awkward to ask. You can go a really long time with like having a false belief about someone before it gets corrected. And I think, that's what most of us are doing. Yeah.
That's so sad. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to give away too much about your upcoming talk, but is there one key thing? Are there a couple of things that you're hoping that the audience learns or takes away or realizes from your second talk here?
Without giving things away, I think they're going to learn that some of the problems they face in communication are common, and they're not just stemming from discomfort, they're stemming from how communication operates in groups, in teams, and just the kind of natural flow of things. Some surprising findings around things should be obvious and they aren't, why things are hard when they should be easy, and just a couple tips on how to get around tricky people, tricky situations, when you need to be direct, and the world just simply doesn't want that from you. So I'm focusing a lot on that in this talk, yeah.
And we have not got down to our nitty-gritty planning because we are in process. For our listeners, we're in March, and TEDxCatawba is in June. So do you plan to incorporate humor?
Of course. I can't give a talk without it. You want me to like play it straight? Yes. Sorry. I'm not the girlfriend.
I'm so excited. We are going to have so much fun. Well, we're going to have so much fun as we plan this because we've got a couple months. And then I think when you hit the stage, it's going to be amazing. So our audience will have a serious treat coming. And one other thing that you said about AI, I wanted to add for everyone listening is we actually do have 2 speakers that will heavily focus on AI. So whether we're talking about technology, we're talking about social psychology, there's a lot of actual overlap in some of these areas now just because AI seems to be kind of all encompassing. So thank you for raising that point. So Tessa, I really enjoyed having you here today. I am always inspired by you. We always have fun. So I just want to thank you for being here. We are honored to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. We're going to have a blast. It's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to this event.
Awesome. We will see you in June.
Yay!
Thank you.
Thanks.
To all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Tune in next week for another episode of Speak with Purpose to get insights into our speakers, sponsors, and partners for TEDxCatawba. You can also learn more about our independently organized TEDx event and purchase your tickets on our website, TEDxCatawba.com. We're also on social media. It's TEDxCatawba. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X. Thank you so much and see you next week.